Or if you don't know what it is, do you at least know one interest group? Well, if you look here, your interest groups are those organizations that sometimes are called special interests. And they are organizations of individuals who have a common goal of influencing the government, specifically when it comes to policy. These groups spend a lot of money and they put a lot of effort into trying to persuade congressmen and the president to either support a bill or to get some legislation passed about a policy on an issue that they believe is very, very important. So having given you the definition, can anybody think of an interest group that you've heard of? Think of the groups that have initials. Like what's a big interest group when it comes to gun rights? Some of you might have parents who are members of this group.
What about like CASA? Like, is that an interest group?
CASA, C-A-S-A?
Yeah, like it's like an advocacy for like foster care kids.
Yeah, that would be one.
ACLU?
ACLU, yep. The one that some of your parents might be a part of, especially if they like to hunt, is the NRA, the National Rifle Association. I'm a member of PETA. Have you guys heard of PETA? Now, you might think it means People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, but I'm a part of the one that's People for the Eating of Tasty Animals. You guys heard of that PETA group? I'm sorry if any of you are vegetarians. I didn't mean to offend you. But People for the Eating of Tasty Animals. There's a joke to share with somebody today. All right. What do they do? Again, they seek to influence public policy decisions. They have a viewpoint of our democracy that we are a pluralist democracy. Plural means more than one, right? So it's the idea that while we may not make much of a difference by ourselves, if we group together with other like-minded people, there's more strength in that. And so we can join and we can get things done. And our American democracy does set itself up to be a pluralist democracy. Now, they are different than political parties. While both of these things, political parties and interest groups, are a linkage entity, that is, they link the common people with the government, interest groups are more specific than political parties. Political parties, remember, kind of do three big things. They get people to run for office, they mobilize the voters, and then they try to influence people who are in office. Interest groups are more specific and instead of dealing with getting people in office and getting people mobilized to vote, they focus on issues and they try to get policy and programs passed. So I guess you could look at it this way. Political parties are more about people, and interest groups are more about policies and programs. Now, here's some more examples of some of our interest groups. There's PETA mentioned, AARP. Guys, I just found out yesterday that I can join AARP. I just turned 50 last month, and it's like the American Association of Retired People. Even though I'm not retired, it said anybody 50 years old and older can join. So I might have to join AARP and see if I get some discounts at restaurants or something like that. National Rifle Association. If any of you are going into the medical field, you have a group called the American Medical Association. And even if you go into like a specialty area, like for example, my wife is a physical therapist. She's a member of the APTA, the American Physical Therapy Association. And to be a member of it, you got to pay your dues every year. And you get a nice magazine sent to you once a month. You have people who represent you in Congress. We're going to get to them in a moment, but they're called lobbyists. So these are some of the groups. You guys mentioned CASA and ACLU. This cartoon down here, this political cartoon, kind of gives a little summary of what interest groups want to do. This is a politician saying, nobody tells me what to do or say. Now, you might not be able to see that pencil, so let me see if I can zoom in on it. But it says lobbyists, and the lobbyists are writing exactly what he's saying. That's to illustrate the purpose and influence of interest groups. They want to influence politicians to make policy and programs that are beneficial to their members. Any questions before we look at the different types of interest groups? One of the characters from Monsters versus Aliens is like the Blob. He's this monster that's just has no skull, no bones. He's just a blob. And they say that they discovered that he doesn't have a brain. And he's like, it turns out you don't need one. All right, I had to just share that. Types of interest groups. Well, there are interest groups that the ordinary American citizen can join. One such group would be the AARP, except you have to be 50 years old and older or retired. But that's for any US citizen 50 and older. Any citizen can join the NRA. You don't have to be a gun owner. You don't have to be a hunter. Anybody can join the National Rifle Association. And then you have business special interests, business groups. These are interest groups that would represent usually a certain kind of business, or we might call it a trade. For example, people who work at auto factories, auto workers. People who work in any type of trade, you know, a carpenter association, lumber association. And then there are agricultural interests. And we pretty much, I think, can tell that this would be an interest group that is going to be concerned with farmers and farm interests. I believe there's a big beef or cattle interest group. I think they're the ones that put out the commercial, beef, it's what's for dinner. And a couple of years ago, they had a lawsuit against Oprah Winfrey because she had reported on mad cow disease, and it wasn't true when it came to American beef farmers. And anyway, that group represented American beef farmers. So you have your agricultural interest groups, labor groups. These differ from business groups in that labor groups represent individuals who are in the working class. This would be your auto workers. The auto group that would have been in the business special interest would be like maybe American car manufacturers, which would include Ford and Chevy and Dodge. It would include the companies, but your labor group, your United Auto Workers, represents the individuals who work for those big companies. And usually they fight for pay raises. Right now, any of you watched the news lately? There has been a strike by workers for I'm drawing a blank, having a
Are you
brain fart.
Line workers, like all the people, is that what you're referring to?
For who?
Like the airline people, like all the Southwest Airlines, all their people are on strike right now.
Oh, I didn't know that, but
Yeah, that's because of the vaccination thing, like the mandate, and all of them are
oh,
going
that's
on
right,
strike.
yeah.
So it's not due to like raises or salary per se, but they're on strike.
Yeah, the company's trying to mandate it. Yeah. No, I remember that now, but no, I was thinking of another specific company. And it's the first time that they've gone on strike in like 35 years. I'll have to, maybe some of you can look it up. But that is a good example on the airline workers. But those are labor groups. There are groups that represent government employees. And a big group is the NEA, the National Educators Association. So that's for teachers. Some of you guys will remember our state group. a couple of years ago going to the Capitol. Remember that? Because you guys probably missed school. All the, a lot of teachers went to Oklahoma City, and they went on, they were petitioning for higher salaries for Oklahoma teachers. That would have been the Oklahoma Educators Association, the OEA. And then you have professional associations like the American Medical Association for doctors, the American Physical Therapy Association. You have this one for lawyers, the American Bar Association. Those are for professionals who have a degree that allows them to work in a field as a professional, and that's different than like your working class factory workers. So those are different types of special interests. Interest groups everywhere, as Buzz Lightyear says to a terrified Woody. Just another slide showing the different kinds of interest groups. Any questions on the different types of interest groups? I'm going to see if I can look up that group that's striking real quick. Well, it says Kellogg's.
That are for ransom. They're for money. The gangs have become much more violent, much stronger over the last.
Sorry about that. I found one about Kellogg's, the people that make cereal like Frosted Flakes, but that doesn't sound like the one I was thinking of. Oh, I know, John Deere. John Deere workers are on strike. Look at this. So this is a farm. Well, this would be a labor group. John Deere is about to make the most money it's ever made, and they're not really sharing their wealth with their workers. They haven't been given a raise in a while. Yeah, you can see the company is about to make $5.7 billion. And so what the John Deere workers are saying is we want a piece of the pie too. The executives who have big salaries, they shouldn't be getting all the raises. So that's one thing that a interest group does, especially a labor group. It fights for higher wages when workers feel like they haven't been given a raise in a while. Just like our Oklahoma teachers did about 4 years ago when they went to Oklahoma City. So any questions on the types of interest groups? Now, there can be no interest groups formed in our class because King Bings is king. Just want to remind you. All right, just seeing if you're with me. Let's talk about what interest groups do. Probably, and you'll want to know what they do for the test. They lobby, which doesn't mean they love to go to Hobby Lobby and shop. They they go to Washington, DC, or they go to the state capitals and they try to talk personally to politicians. They make phone calls to politicians. They encourage the members of their interest group to write letters to politicians. They lobby. Oh, incidentally, let me back up for just a second and let me tell you this. These types of economic interests right here, the business ones, they make up over half of all interest groups. This is the biggest type. Your labor groups are less than 1%. Your professional groups are about 5.5%. Citizen groups like the NRA and AARP make up 14%, and then your government groups make up about 12%. So the biggest, the most numerous type of interest groups are your business ones, over half of them. But anyway, back to what they do. They lobby, whether directly or indirectly. Directly is going to the Capitol and trying to talk face to face with your representative. Indirectly is writing letters, making phone calls. Lobbyists also work on raising money for their interest group. Sometimes lobbyists will go before a Senate committee or a House committee and testify. For example, we're going to learn about the different types of committees in Congress coming up in, I think, chapter 12. But let's say the agricultural committee is meeting. You might have, like, let's just take, for example, the John Deere workers. They might send one of their labor union lobbyists to DC to testify before the agricultural committee. And then lobbyists also try to educate and inform the public, and they try to engage in public debate. So direct lobbying and indirect lobbying can also be called inside lobbying or outside lobbying. Interest groups also monitor, that is, they keep an eye. Remember the watchdog function of the media? Well, interest groups also have kind of a watchdog or monitor function, and they keep an eye on not the politicians, but the programs and the policies. They watch these programs and policies to see if they're effective and if there needs to be some suggestions for change. Now, the main group that special interests lobby is Congress. Remember from your assignment about the three branches of government that the legislative branch, Congress, makes laws. So they deal with policy and programs. So the main inside lobbying is with Congress. But they also sometimes lobby the president, especially if they can get access to him. Or maybe the president will set up a special meeting. And sometimes they will lobby not the president himself, but officials within the executive branch of government. Remember, the executive branch of government has all those cabinet leaders and all those bureaucracies. But as you can see here, the Cheshire Cat is mostly on the legislative branch. What is lobbying? I don't think I went over that, but it's any activity by which a group tries to pressure legislatures and influences the process that determines or produces policies or programs. Now, all big time important interest groups, they keep some of their lobbyists in Washington, D.C. So for example, I don't know where the NRA is headquartered out of. Guess I can look real quick. Isn't the internet wonderful? Because you can look up stuff very quickly. So the NRA is located in Fairfax County, Virginia. So that doesn't really help us because it's really close to DC. So let me try another group. Let's try let's try PETA. Let's see where they're at. PETA, they're in North Fork, Virginia, so they're right there too. All right. I keep striking out here. Let's try ACLU. Let's see where they're out of. I bet they're out of somewhere in the South. Okay, their headquarters are New York. So while the ACLU, their headquarters is in New York, New York, they will have some of their lobbyists living in Washington, D.C., so they always have a presence there. All righty, any questions before we move on to the iron triangles? All right, if you're following along in your textbook, you're going to find the iron triangles. On the page 412. And these next two things are also going to be on the test, so you'll want to take note. Iron triangles and issue networks. What are these two entities? Now, they're real easy to remember because they both begin with I, iron triangle, issue network. These are larger groups that special interests are a part of. So for example, an iron triangle is made up of these three different groups: interest groups, a committee or subcommittee in Congress, and then some bureaucratic organization. So for example, this iron triangle is concerned with the tobacco industry, smoking, chewing tobacco, and I would assume vaping now. So what you'll have in the triangle is you'll have interest groups that deal with tobacco. And it may be more than one interest group. You might have a tobacco farmers interest group, and you might have a corporate interest group for cigarette companies like Philip Morris. Then you'll have one of the bureaucratic agencies that would deal with tobacco. In this case, it is a division of the Department of Agriculture. It's the tobacco division. So these two groups, and then a subcommittee in the House and or in the Senate that have to do with agriculture. And so these three groups work together. This is the Iron Triangle. They work together for legislation concerning the tobacco industry. And then these arrows that connect them just talk about what each group, how each group affects the others. So this is an iron triangle. If you're taking notes, iron triangles are long-term. They're long-term associations. Whereas issue networks are on a shorter scale. Now, an issue network is made up of more than 3 entities. So remember the triangle, remember the TRI, tri, which means 3, iron triangles, 3 groups working together. Iron, just think of how iron lasts a long time. So this whole entity, this iron triangle, lasts a long time, and it's made up of these 3 groups. Where an issue network is more focused on a issue on a short-term basis, and it involves a lot more groups than just 3. So if we have an issue network revolving around tobacco, you would have your congressional subcommittees, you would have your interest groups, you would have the bureaucracy agency, the 3 things up here. But then you might also have a local government, a state government. You might have another type of group called a think tank that does research. And then the media might be involved. The media makes it more of a public issue, whereas these 3 groups are dealing with it within the meetings within government. An issue network is a more short-term group than the Iron Triangle. They might meet over a specific issue within the tobacco industry, and then once they're done, the network dissolves. It may form later, but it's not long-term like the Iron Triangle. Here's another slide that talks about issue networks. It is a network of interest groups, media outlets, academic institutions, congressional staff members, and private think tanks that meet to advocate for public policy. Here's another difference. These networks are more driven by their ideals, whereas the iron triangles are more driven by the interest itself. Questions?
No.
All righty. All right, so we'll have to do these last two things on Wednesday, and then we'll jump into chapter 12. So if there's no questions, have a good rest of your Monday and a great Tuesday. We'll
You
see you
too.
on Wednesday.
I have a question.
Yeah,
I have turned in my test and my like last module one's test and like my module one's like outline. They're only like a day late, but they haven't been graded.
is this Adriana?
Yeah.
Okay, I've sent you a couple of
Emails.
emails.
My email doesn't work for Carl Albert.
Okay, well, if you don't mind me asking you with people there, or you can send me a private email. I
Okay.
just needed to know why it was late.
Alrighty. I'm not sure why I was late, honestly. That was a long time ago. I probably wasn't here the day it was supposed to be turned in or something. I don't have Wi-Fi at my house.
Okay, if you're having issues, then I just needed to know that. And then I
Alright.
think your module 2 one was late also. Same issue.
Because the bell rung before I could turn it in.
I have a question.
Yeah,
There's nothing on the module 3 assignments.
Yeah, I keep on looking and it says no content to display.
oh no, hold on a second.
We're supposed to say
Yeah.
Well, what were y'all gonna do when it came day that we had to turn it in? You have to speed run like 9 assignments.
I think that's with everyone in the class. Like the whole class can't see. them.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I was wondering why there hadn't been any briefs turned in. So,
How's my dad asking?
Listen here.
It's, yeah, but you still would have been like.
I don't even have it on the overview. Okay, so I will get those posted today with adjusted due dates. And I apologize for that. Thank you for bringing that up. That's it. We'll see you on Wednesday. Is that it, Panama?
Yes.
Okay. Somebody turn off your system.
Okay. Hey, can you turn?
No.
Okay.
I would have.
You're just sitting there doing this.